I am connecting and I'm waiting for Facebook. And Herman, my chat window went away. There we go. Let's see. You're live, Herman.
Good afternoon, Atlanta. This is Veterans Today. You're listening to the new WCEG Network on WCEGTalkRadio.com. We will be live streaming on Facebook. You can watch us on your smart TV or your smartphone. My name is Herman Allenson. My co-host is Anthony Aiken. We are the Worldwide Community Empowerment Group. We speak life in the community. You can like us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter. And again, you can also uh, follow us on WCEG Radio, WCEG Network, and we're live streaming on Facebook. Anthony, my co-host, will introduce himself next, then our guest.
I tell you what, Herman, so good to see you, as always, especially in these trying times with pandemic and how the world has changed. So it's really good to see you, my brother. Folks, we have a very, very exciting show today. We have an individual who to me is like an icon in the community. Not only is he a former soldier, but he's a very, very strategic businessman in the city of Atlanta. And quiet as it kept, all three of us are members of the greatest fraternity in America, Omega Psi Phi fraternity. So today we have with us Brother Isaac Clark Jr. Brother Isaac, good morning. How you doing?
Good morning, Colonel. How you doing?
Man,
I'm well.
Herman and I are blessed to see you. Glad that you were able to come on WCEG Talk Radio today. And, you know, folks, he's going to talk to us about something that all family members around the world, regardless if you're a veteran or not, will need, his services. And that being mortuary services. When our time transitions, we won't know it, but we're going to go to some place like him. So, Brother Clark, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into, you know, the subject of today.
Well, thank you, Colonel. My name is Isaac Clark Jr., and I'm the owner of Grissom Clark Funeral Home. I was born in Randolph County, in Cuthbert, Georgia, during the Jim Crow era. And I'm number 7 of 13 siblings. My father was a sharecropper, and my mother was a home engineer.
I like that.
I graduated 3rd in my class from the Randolph County Training School in 1961. And during that time, I was not able to go directly into the college, so my ticket to college was to enlist into the Army, where I enlisted in February of 1965.
Wow.
And I was ordered, received orders to go to Vietnam in January of 1966, at the beginning of the Vietnam era. And I remember very clearly getting home on Christmas Day of 1966 from Vietnam. So that was a happy occasion. And my mother said all of the prayers had been answered during that time, but they turned right around and sent my brother right behind me into Vietnam. So she had about 24 months to concentrate, not to worry, but just to keep us constantly uplifted in prayers. Okay, After I was discharged from the military in 1968, I entered into Albany State College, which is now Albany State University, on the GI Bill.
Oh, okay.
I graduated from Albany State College in 1971, and I entered the graduate school at Atlanta University, which is now Clark Atlanta University, where I received my MBA in accounting in 1973. So at that time, with accounting background, I joined one of the big 8 accounting firms, Anderson & Company. I worked there for about 6 years. And I'm gonna just give you a synopsis. I went back after leaving Anderson & Company. I went back to Atlanta University and worked with Dr. Cleveland Denard as the Director of Fiscal Management there, with Dr. Denard and Dr. Cleveland and Dr. Cole. And after staying there from 79 to 84, Dr. Denard at that time ran into some difficulty with the trustee board, and they let him go. And then Dr. William came in, and he wiped all of us out. All the top was let go. So that was one of them trying times there. And I left there. So I think most things happen for the good.
Yes.
So I left there, and I was to be the Director of Finance at the King Center with Mrs. Coretta Scott King and Mrs. Ferris. And I was there for 10 years there as the Director of Finance. And then I left and went on sabbatical to go to mortuary school. So, and I went to mortuary school and graduated in 96. And I got my license in 96. I haven't looked back. So I've been running Grissom Clark Funeral Home ever since then.
That's a very interesting background, eh, Herman? His background is extremely interesting. So why don't you tell us a little bit about things of importance since you're a veteran and now you are the owner of your Grissom Clark Mortuary Services. You know, we have veterans all the time that are transitioning and they're passing around and passing through and et cetera. And Herman speaks quite a bit about the DD Form 214 and the importance of having that DD Form 214 when a service member passes. So as your company, your mortuary services, tell our listeners how important is that DD Form 214 when a veteran transitions? Well,
I remember receiving my DD 214, but the DD 214, that is a certificate of release or discharge from active duty. And the DD 214 was first issued in 1950. Prior to that time, they had another one that took its place, but the DD 214 is what we're going to concentrate on today. The DD 214 is commonly used by various government agencies, but it's primarily from the Department of Veteran Affairs. And that DD 214 is used to prove when a family come in, or a veteran come in here, how we get to that DD 214 when we are sitting around the table and we are working on the worksheet copy for the death certificate, which is another important document that we go through. And when you get to a part, they're gonna ask a question in there: have you been in the armed forces, yes or no? And once the family will say yes, then that's the first thing we would ask for is DD 214, so we can use that to see whether or not his eligibility for to the VA cemetery and for the interments to the VA cemetery, and we could approve to divide whether or not they're going to be able to get military honors to the deceased veteran. and also just to obtain a grave marker. So sometimes when a family come in here, they don't know exactly where the DD-214. They would have misplaced it, or they just can't seem to put the finger on it. So therefore, that's where pre-planning comes into play. I hope at some point today we'll talk about some pre-planning
Absolutely.
for veterans, so we can talk about that. So
Absolutely.
if we were doing more pre-planning, then that document would have already come up, and they would have had time to go and locate that document before the loved one expired.
Absolutely.
So those are some of the reasons why we use the DD-214, and also to qualify for the veteran benefits that we will go into later on some of the details of the veteran benefit that's around it. But everything starts with the DD-214.
Yeah, it does. And on this, since we've been doing this program, we tell our listening audience ways that we know that if you have misplaced it, a lot of us when we got out, and actually I went to I'm not going to distract, but I went to Vietnam in June of '66 and came back in June of '67. So we were actually over there at the same time.
At the same time, yeah.
And we'll move right along. But if you misplaced it, if you need one, because I have my nonprofit is Veteran Helping Veterans, and we deal with disability claims, medical claims, and you need it for all of those benefits.
Yes.
What we ask people to do is, if you don't have it, is part of in the pre-planning process, is you can either go to your Department of Veterans Services, Georgia Department of Veterans Services, or you can go to the National Records or request it there. And it's been dealing with COVID-19. I'm not sure it's working, but there in the past there's been a fax number that you could fax and get it also. But that's the approach we've been taking.
Right, and we also have it where that's a number that we give our family that we could start encountering in order to locate the DD-214. But it's at that time when there is an at need, and an at need meaning that a death has already occurred, that it takes about sometimes 2 to 3 weeks to get that DD-214. So that's the reason why when we talk about pre-planning before it happens, then we got time to get all these documents so we can make sure that the veteran will get all the benefits that they should have.
Right.
Well, since we said this word a couple of times, pre-planning, I think that's a good way for us to actually get into that subject, because that's very, very important. So from your perspective there, Brother Clark, why don't you let our listeners know what exactly you could assist them with pre-planning?
Well, when you talk about pre-planning, and then the common word that you hear all the time is pre-need. Pre-need or pre-planning, which all is the same thing, but pre-planning is when you come in, you planning your service and you're prepaying for the funeral services before they are needed. Often years, sometimes 10 and 20 and sometimes 30 years before the need arrives, you would have already come in and you would already pre-plan your funeral. And what the pre-planning ahead does is release the family emotionally and financially, and you receive the funeral of your choice. And after you have done your all the pre-arrangement, it will give you the family a peace of mind that everything was taken care, and it was taken care in the way that I wanted to happen. Because sometimes, you know, we run into different situations where a family will come out and pre-plan their arrangement, and then the next of kin will come in and try to change it.
Correct. Yeah.
You see, but once it's there in writing and they sign it, it makes it harder to change it. And also by coming in and done a pre-arrangement, it releases the loved ones from the added burden and stress and confusion. Also, it protects the loved one from all this hasty difficulties and cost decisions. Because the ones that we have noticed throughout the years, that those who come in and do the pre-planning and the pre-paying, they pay less for a funeral. When you walk in and do an at-need, when all the stress and the burden is and the confusion is going on, you spend more money. And so that's the beauty of the pre-arrangement. And also the beauty of the pre-arrangement is that you take advantage of today's prices. Everything is continued to, inflation is keep going up. So when you come in and do a pre-arrangement, you freeze all the costs in place. And it saves money and reserve your estate cost. Let's use for an example, if you had a policy for $10,000 and you don't come in and do a pre-arrangement, but you're gonna do an at-need when that time comes. At-need, when you come and do an at-need, it eats into the face value of your policy. So if you were to come in and pay in advance, then as inflation goes up, the cost of the policy is keep going up also, but at the same time, you're earning interest on that money, so you would never have to pay another penny once you, regardless of how high the inflation goes or the cost of things go, it freezes everything in place. That's one of the beauty of doing a pre-arrangement.
I have a question for you there, Brother Clark.
Yes.
Let's say you have a veteran family and they don't have the resources up front to pay for the pre-planning, but they do have an insurance policy. So would you take, at that particular time, get involved with the insurance policy of the veteran that's while he's still alive to help with the pre-planning? Or is this something that they need to come to the table with funding? Or do you have a payment plan? Or how does it go about for a veteran to pay for the pre-planning if their resources are limited?
That's a good question. If a family come in which it happens sometime more frequent than we like to think about, they could come in and they could make the arrangement, and especially if they have gotten older and the cost of the policy going to be a little high, they can also start to make payments on the services.
Okay.
Now, once they make the payments, they can start making the payments. I'm an insurance agent. So you have to be an insurance agent to do pre-arrangement, pre-needs. So once they pay up maybe $500 or more, we start putting it into the insurance policy so we can start drawing interest on the money. So we don't commingle those funds into our general account. we go ahead and file a policy on it. So that policy will be, it will begin to grow interest. But to answer your question, that they could, even if they had a policy, when they come in, we would always, they can assign the services, whatever the amount of the contract of service come up to be, we could take an assignment, what you call an assignment on the policy. And the insurance company will send us the portion that they have assigned to us, and they will send the balance to the family.
Okay, we're gonna keep going, but at this time, let me remind our listeners, you're listening to WCEGTalkRadio.com. You can like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. We're live streaming on Facebook, and we are also on YouTube. As you log in as a subscription subscriber, and you can watch us that way. And at this time, will you give the audience your contact information?
Clark?
Oh, my contact information?
Yes.
Oh, it's Grissom Clark Funeral Home. Our address is 227 East Lake Drive, Atlanta, Georgia, 30317. And the telephone number is 404-373-3191. And our fax number is 404-373-0292.
You know, we want all of our listeners to know that from the conception of this Veterans Today Talk radio program, it has always been our thought to be an advocate of veterans that have served our nation with integrity and honor, but that veteran has gone on to the next level by doing different things, and in your case, starting your own business. And for me, that's very inspirational, because you just took it to another level. You got out of the military, you utilized the GI Bill to your advantage, you got an undergraduate degree, you went on and got a master's degree, you worked in a financial corporate world, and even went back to your school where you got your advanced degree. And then, as fate turns out, Grissom Clark Funeral Home was started. So how long have you been in business, so other veterans and people would know how long you've been doing what you're doing?
Well, the funeral home started in 1973, the founder by Reverend T.P. Grissom, who was a retired United Methodist preacher. So I met Reverend Grissom around 61. So when I joined Central United Methodist Church, and so he, after starting the funeral home in 73, he worked until 1978, and at that time he could not handle the business. So I just purchased the funeral home, and I just worked. I was continuing to work outside, and we had a funeral director out here that was just running the business. So I didn't have the license and everything. So so when I went to mortuary school and graduated in 1995 and 95, and then when we got our license, then that's when I started working in the funeral.
Herman, doesn't that sound like scholarship? Doesn't that sound like perseverance? Doesn't that sound like uplift? I mean,
All of that.
Our cardinal principles, you just hit on each one. And as fate has it, 1973, right after you left the college to be able to go on and to get into this thing, I applaud you. I applaud you.
Well, you see, sometimes you don't when you get a little older and start looking back over your life, sometimes you see how things start working in your behalf. I never thought that I would be in the funeral business, but at the end of my military career, when I was stationed at Fort Benjamin Harrison in Indianapolis, Indiana, that was during the Vietnam War when the bodies were just going everywhere. They a body may supposed to go to Chicago, may wind up in Miami. So the military had to come up with an escort team. In the last 6 months of my career, I joined the escort team. And so I got to see the funeral homes all over the country, but I never thought that this would be something that I would be doing at some point. So it's just amazing to me when you look back over your life sometimes.
And that is so true, as Herman says. I agree with you. It's amazing. You just don't know, but you've followed through and you've been very, very successful. But there's something else that you do that I think is very, very important. And I participated in it. Why don't you tell our listeners about the program that you have highlighting veterans and the importance of it for you and your business?
Well, what you're talking about is the service of remembrance. Service of remembrance, where we recognize all of our families that we have served in the last 12 months, where normally it happens in the second week in December. And during that service, when we invite all of our families that we have served for that last 12 months to come out, and we have this service of remembrance. And during that time, we always select a veteran to come out that we honor, a veteran. And we give that veteran all the accolades, the treatments. We go and pick up the veteran in the limousine. We bring the veteran and his family to the church, and we take that veteran back home and do all the things that we pertaining to that veteran after we have had the service, and then we have had the after hours, the repast lights, and then it's a thing that we are up to now about 10 years, 10 straight years of doing this type of service. So, and with the coronavirus now, we're not going to church now, so that's going to impact on us on this year.
Well, I can tell our listeners that I was honored to be one of the speakers for Brother Clark and for that service of remembrance. And my wife and children were all there. And it was such an honor to be the speaker of that program for you that day and to be a part of that, what I consider a historic ceremony, because it's a good thing that you do to connect with the community, but also to remember the families that have passed on and give the veteran the opportunity to share some of his thoughts. But you just mentioned something too that's kind of keen, and we've seen this on the news, which kind of upset me, especially around the early part of the pandemic environment situation. Many of you probably seen in New York where they were putting these large cooler vans in a parking lot of a funeral home where they had to store bodies until they got to them. So can you tell our audience, what does Grissom Clark do now in the midst of the pandemic when someone passes from COVID-19 or complications associated with COVID-19, and what type systems have you put in place for your staff working on the remains of a veteran or someone that needs your services?
Well, that's a very good question. That we go back and we think back in the years when AIDS first came out, it had the stigma similar to what we have now, but it was not at the magnitude of what it is with the COVID-19. But what we do, it changes the entire way we preserve the body. We have to put on all our PPE, just like you will see the medical examiners and the face mask and the shield and all these things when coming in. We have to do the same kind of thing. So once we get through the the preserving process, then everything pretty much is okay. But we have to, when we adhere to the guidelines from the FDC and all the others ones that was requiring us to have. Remember when they was talking about we couldn't have but 10 people to come into the funeral home, and then they changed it that you could go to 50. Then they went back to 10. Then we still have all of these things that we have to do, and in our services we where the people can't come into your chapel to do the service, we have live streaming. So we have been live streaming all of our services that we have had. When sometimes they would come in and they can't come into the building, they just be out in the parking lot. Everybody would be out there with their cell phone, listen to everything that was be going on inside. So it's completely changed, and we got signs all on the doors when they come up. And right now we check the temperature of everyone that comes into the building. For my staff, we go a step. We go a step further. We check their temperature when they come in the morning, and also we check their oxygen level to make sure everything is fine, because if anything happens to any one of our staff, it could put all of us out for a while. So we continue to operate from that standpoint. Even if you walk into the funeral home now, the first thing, this is what's gonna happen. But if I wanted to shift back, if I could shift back just to the veterans, because there's some issues that pertain to veterans.
Yes.
That I need to talk to, that has to do with the COVID-19.
Sure.
What we have noticed that, and we have personally seen this coming through the funeral home, where the doctors on the death certificate, they will not put the real causes that you would ordinarily would have put on the death certificate, such as diabetes, renal failure, high blood pressure. They would just put COVID-19. Now, if they just put COVID-19 on your death certificate, then a spouse who qualifies to get a pension from their loved ones will not be able to get that pension.
What?
They will not be able to get that pension if they just had COVID-19. But let me tell you what we've been doing. We have been looking at the death certificate, make sure what it says. And if the hospital does not put what we feel that they should have been there, we go ahead and give it to ask the next of kin to take it to their primary physician. And because when you take it to your primary physician, you have to make sure that you're gonna put something on that death certificate that has to be the reason why you are a disabled veteran.
That is
If
amazing.
if it's prostate cancer, if it's diabetes 2, if it's high blood pressure, these things need to show on the death certificate. Otherwise, the spouse will not get their pension. And by the way, let me tell you what that pension is. That pension is half of what the veterans was getting. And see, we had one that came in just, I think when the pandemic just started, and it just started out in April.
Yes.
We had one to come in that we had to change like this, and we made the change and we gave it to the family to take it back to their primary physician. And we fill out all the papers for the benefit of the family. That's one thing we do. We fill out all of these papers for it. And once you have that along with your death certificate, and then we filed that, and within a month, the family was drawing their pension. So that's another thing. And you would know that if a family could get their pension that close, and we have contributed to filling out all the documents for them, the forms for them, we think that they really gonna come back to us, and then they're gonna tell all their loved ones about what we have been doing at the funeral.
Hey, Herman, we better salute him. We better salute him, Herman.
That is very
absolutely,
important because
absolutely.
actually, I have a veteran group. My group is Veteran Helping Veterans, and we have about 150 active members. And at this time, I have a funeral going on. It's being taken care of by another funeral, but since the COVID-19 started, I've had calls about the exact thing that you just put out there. And it's very important that we do everything we can to let all veteran families know that. Thank you.
That's tremendous information.
Well, one other thing, how I'm a member of the Vietnam veteran group over there with Reverend McGee.
Yeah.
And I had a pre-need seminar that I did over there with him. And we was talking about this, and those men were really captivated because they really did not know, and a lot of the veterans do not know that what has to happen in order for their loved ones to get the pension. And anybody who is drawing a pension, the spouse will be able to draw also, but it's just half of what the veteran is getting. While we are talking about this, if you don't mind, I would just like to take the opportunity to talk about what of the reimbursable that a veteran should be getting. You have to break it down between a service connection and a non-service connected service. So if you are service connected, then your burial allowance start at $2,000. And then you can add all of your transportation costs, that is transferring the remains to the funeral home, the use of the hearse, the mileage to the National Cemetery. All of these costs would be added together, and the spouse would get these funds at some point. This is a reimbursable amount, and you can't sign that to the funeral home either. But so we go ahead and fill out those benefit forms for the family. Now, if you are not service connected, if you're not getting a check every month, then there are some benefits that you have also, in which we fill out the application for all veterans. Every veteran coming here, we fill these papers out so they could get reimbursed for, if they go into a private cemetery, they will get reimbursed for the plot. They could get reimbursed for the interment costs, and they could get a head marker. But the only difference is that they would not get the $2,000 that the service-connected veterans will get. Now, one thing that you don't have to be a service-connected veteran, you can get the $2,000 if you die at the VA Medical Center or a nursing home that has been approved by the VA. So they will get the $2,000 also, plus all these other added expenses. Do you have any questions or anything about this?
Well, thank you. I won't let you keep going, but that's a lot of information that I'm sure a lot of veterans and their families not aware of.
Right.
And I do meetings by Zoom, so I will be contacting you.
Okay, all right.
Well, you know, I'm very glad that you mentioned that because, excuse me, I'm 100% disabled veteran, service connected, and I didn't know all of that detail. You know what I mean? That's something that, Brother Clark, we're going to have to get you to write up for us to put on our website and to get out to, you know, veteran groups and church ministries, et cetera, because that's vital information for a
Right.
family. You know what I mean? That is just unbelievable. I did not know about this $2,000 and those added on things that, you know, is involved with that. So that leads to another question. Let's say the veteran passes in Atlanta and his family wants him to, or her, to be interned in, let's say, California.
Okay.
So does Grissom Clark Funeral Home work in conjunction with the mortuary service in California, a particular city where that veteran's going to be interned to help them with that transportation issue and all of that?
Okay, how that works is that sometimes families will want to have a service here in the Atlanta area, and then they would want, after the service, they would want the interment services in another state. Now, what we do, we go ahead and put all of those costs. Most times when it happens like this, and they tell me what's the name of the funeral home that they want on the other end, I would take it upon myself to go ahead and contact that funeral home in the other city, and I will get all the costs from that funeral home, and I will add all these costs together. And once we get, so the family will have an idea on what this total cost for this service is going to cost them. We will go ahead and pay for the transportation costs on this end. But the cost that all these costs now, they can be reimbursed to the family for the transportation to the airport, the transportation you out the hearse, and the transferring of the remains to the funeral home, and also the cost for the funeral home on the other end, going to the airport and the use of their hearses and doing things, all of this transportation cost. All the transportation costs that is directly pertaining to the veteran is a cost that could be reimbursed to the family.
That's excellent news. That's excellent news. So do you find now with the situation being with the pandemic and COVID-19, do you find families now opting more for you know, different type of burial? Are they doing more of you know, in-ground or what? What are they doing now?
Well, it's a mixture of both. What we are seeing with all the pandemic is that they are having burials and they are having cremations.
Correct.
Now, from the cremation standpoint, and speaking of cremation, you know, there are 3 types of cremations. Let me explain.
Did not know that. 3 types.
There are 3 types of, there's 3 types of cremation. There's a direct cremation.
What is that called?
A direct cremation, where we just pick the body up and get all the permits and everything we need to cremate, and we take it directly to the crematory, and that's all. So that's what you call just a direct cremation. The second one is a direct cremation with a memorial service. That means that we would take the body, we would get it cremated, and then we would have the cremated remains And then we would have an urn perhaps, and we would have a memorial service. That's when they would come in and have a memorial service, and we would live stream the service and all of that. So that's the second service. And the third type of cremation is where you do everything as if it was a traditional funeral service. You would embalm the body, you would dress the body, you would have instead of having a casket that you're gonna bury, you would have a rental casket.
Mhm.
And after the service, you have a service, and after the service, you will cremate. And then you bring the cremation bag, and you get an urn, and you give it to your family.
You
So
know,
those are the three types of cremations.
well, you know, that really that's very interesting, because not long ago, even with this, just prior to the start of the pandemic, we went to a service for veteran, and no, actually, let me back up. A viewing for the veteran at this particular funeral home. People were streaming through, et cetera, et cetera. And then the next day, they said, you know, we're going to come back and we're going to have a service. Well, to my surprise, when I came back, my wife and I just saw an urn and a photograph.
That's a cremation with a memorial service.
Yeah, and I'm like, what happened? He said, well, he was in a rental casket.
That's right.
A rental casket for the viewing, but right after it, and everybody was gone, then his remains were taken to the crematory, and that's when he got into the urn deal, and they came back, and I was just flabbergasted that happened.
Yeah.
So
Let me, you mentioned something that I think some of us not aware of, is that the signature requirements are different for cremation than they are for a funeral. Can you explain that?
Repeat your question again.
As far as authorizing the funeral home to do a cremation, isn't there more signatures required?
There's a contract already for services that you're gonna do when for traditional service come in. You're gonna have a contract that you have to sign for services. Now, when there is cremation involved, you have to have a contract for cremation, and you have to make sure that you have the next of kin. You have to. This is where it get a little touchy, because you can't just anyone come in and sometimes will make arrangement, but they can make arrangement, but if they are not the direct next of kin, you cannot sign that contract for cremation. It has to be the next of kin. And sometimes where there's more than one siblings that is the next of kin, you may want to get at least 2 or 3 sometimes to sign that documents. And if that has been some a little disgruntled in the family, you know, like they do sometimes, you may want to make sure that you get all these documents signed before you go to that crematory.
Can you give us your contact information again, please?
It's Grissom Clark Funeral Home, 227 East Lake, that's 2 words, Drive, Atlanta, Georgia, 30317. Telephone number is 404-373-3191. And our fax number is 404-373-0292. And our email, our website is www.grissom-clark.com.
Well, Brother Clark, I guess what I gathered out of this last segment about the signature requirement for cremation and everything, that they have hand-to-hand combat training at your mortuary school for those families that come in act crazy?
Well, when you've been in it as long as we have, you can detect that early when they come.
Before
As you
we
get-
run out of time, we got two quick questions. One
Okay.
is service-connected disabilities. I know, would you, me and Anthony has some information on that, but would you tell us what, in your words, service-connected disability mean?
Oh, service-connected disability mean that you have incurred ailment that has to do with the military. It could be, like in my case, I'm a 90% disabled vet, service connected.
So am I.
And I'm working on that 10%. So it doesn't
So
matter.
am I. Anthony is 100.
He's 100, so I'm 90. So that means that you know, when I was in Vietnam, there was Agent Orange there, and Agent Orange would cause prostate cancer. And so in 2002, I came down with prostate cancer. So as of today, I'm 18 years cancer free from prostate cancer. That's a part of my disability that goes on. And then you have other disabilities too, like sleep apnea and all, and you can have different things that'll create, once the Ancient Orange, they tell me now that once the Ancient Orange get into your system, into your body, it stays there. And the older you get, the more you will see some reactions to the Ancient Orange.
Yeah, I have some information on that also. Matter of fact, the Agent Orange newsletter, they sent it out annually. It came out, and there are actually 14 different diseases that are associated with Agent Orange.
Yes.
And another one is isometric heart disease, because
Right.
I was in Vietnam also, and I have isometric heart disease and several other things that they allow for. And diabetes, type 2 diabetes is included.
That's one. Yeah, that's one of mine.
So-
Type 2 diabetes.
And the other question that we had was, when you handle the service for a retired person versus an active duty person, are there differences?
The only difference is that when it comes down to military honors, retired person or active duty person, they're gonna get the 21 gun salute. Now, the 3 years, like I am a 3-year veteran, all I would get they would play the tab, they would fold the flag, and they would present the flag the next end. That's the only difference. Now, it's not gonna make any difference as far as the monetary, the funds that you're gonna get, the reimbursement, all that's the same. All that the same. I would like to, we had, since I've been in business, the Colonel, I've had the opportunity to ship one body to Arlington National Cemetery. Now that's an altogether different ball game with itself there. And the waiting list is so long there. We had this individual, this colonel that passed in January. He could not get scheduled until August 2nd of 2019. Almost 8 months for to get the service, but he was determined he wanted to be at Arlington National, and he wanted to get all the accolades that go along with it.
Well, I can tell you from personal experience I can tell you from personal experiences with my wife, and when her mother passed, and her husband was a veteran, and he was in Arlington, and she wanted to go to Arlington.
Yeah,
And it took almost 6 months
6
wait
months.
period. But once she was approved and we got to Arlington, it was probably one of the most serene,
Yes, yes,
dignified
yes,
ceremonies that I've ever witnessed.
yes,
To the point that Arlington is so large that when you go into the building to meet with the Arlington staff, they immediately ask you to download the Arlington app to your phone, and the Arlington app will tell you exactly the section where the interment will occur. Once the ceremony was completed and we all left, we got a note saying that within a couple of weeks, we will tell you the exact plot, locations, et cetera, et cetera. So she still has that app on her phone. So anytime she wants to think about her mom and her father, she can actually go to her phone and take a look at that app and see exactly where they are. So I understand
yeah.
the period of time. You got to start early.
Got to start early for that. And that's a lot of planning. That's a lot of planning. You got to qualify first. You got to qualify. There's rules for that.
Yep, yep.
Okay, the clock on the wall will tell us we have completed our time. So with that, you got quick closing comments within the next minute?
Well, I just want to thank you for inviting me to be your guest today. And I'm just so delighted just to be here. And especially when it comes down to veterans, that's my heart. And I want to make sure that everything that comes to a veteran, he or she should get it. So I hope that today that we have shined some light on some issues that one may not have been aware of. And if they want more information, they could just give me a call, and I definitely would do what we do. And always remember that once you come to Grissom Clark Funeral Home, we take care of all the paperwork for you. And the very last one we take care for you will be for your pension, for your so I just want to thank you, and I just thank you for taking this opportunity. And as you can see, I've had a good time here, really.
Oh, yeah. Well, I can tell you, you made Brother Ike Clark and your mama Essie Clark proud.
Well, we are all three veterans. Yeah. So it's been a great Friday for me.
Right.
I've been doing this voluntarily on the radio for 5 years, and for my veteran group for 8 years. So, and I will be inviting you to participate.
Okay,
so,
thank you.
With that, we have run out of time.
Yep.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Anthony?
Yep, I tell you what, it's been a great show, Brother Clark. Thank you. You've honored us. You've honored us.
Thank you.
Some valuable information. And we can't go out without saying a big ups to our president, CEO, Kahuna, Ms. Rogers, because without her, we wouldn't be here. And Herman, always a pleasure seeing you, my brother.
Yeah, my brother.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
You guys be safe.
Okay, bye-bye.